Hello and welcome back to the Back to Business podcast. Today I have someone really exciting on the podcast, Todd Flood. He is managing partner of Flood Law and super excited to have you on the podcast today. How are we doing today, Todd?
I'm great. I'm great, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
Good. Awesome. Yeah, thanks for being here. And you are a Detroit native. Are you born and raised in Detroit?
Yeah, downriver. I was born and raised down in Allen Park, Michigan. But cut my teeth in Detroit as a lawyer, as a prosecutor. So,
Amazing.
yeah,
Well, shout
yeah,
out
yeah,
Allen Park to all of our Allen Park listeners. I'm sure we have a
yeah.
lot, especially after this
We
podcast.
should.
They're just
We
gonna
should. Yeah.
through the roof.
We'll put it out there for them.
Yes, yeah, for sure. Awesome. So let's go back to young Todd, to back when you got started. I want to hear a little bit about your background. What led you to pursue a career in law, and what got you started?
God gave me the heart, but not the DNA to become a professional football player. So I I always enjoyed fighting for the underdog. Um, I started off as a Wayne County prosecutor. I was actually a clerk and worked myself through law school at the same time. And I had back in that day, we had the best lawyers, I think, in the country. We had the most trials in Frank Murphy Hall of Justice. So for a real trial lawyer, I got to sit around the best. And then ultimately became an assistant prosecutor. Um, Started right off doing homicides and major murder cases. Worked with some of the best lawyers doing those. Um, Gradually went up the chain to become a principal attorney in charge of the drug house unit with Mike Duggan when he was the prosecutor at the time. And then I was going to go to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Um, but a friend of mine, Gerald Evelyn, convinced me that the people need you out in the street working with your own shingle. And it was a big decision, because uh, fighting for people that don't have two dimes, two nickels to rub together. They were innocent, some of them, a lot of them, and fighting for that cause when you have to go up against the government, where they have all the resources in the world. They can fly in witnesses from California, Alaska, from out of the side of the country. If you get charged with the crime, sir, I don't know if you'd have enough money to fly in witnesses from all over the world, right? So it
Definitely
was a
not.
difficult gig, right?
Yeah.
So I set up my own shingle, and 25 years later, here I am, and we take on major cases from. We were the lead counsel in the Eastern Michigan University case where 43 women were raped. We represented the victims in that case. We represented a lot of victims in the Dr. Anderson case and the Dr. Larry Nasser case. We handled a lot of those cases. Wrongful death cases where people, have died in catastrophes. Um, we had a house explosion case where a company installed a gas stove and they left open a line. The next thing you know, the house blew up and a lady died from the carbon monoxide burning off her body. Um,
Oh, wow.
Currently, we have a case where two little boys, 9 and 12, died in a house fire where we allege that the firefighters didn't search the room. And subsequent to another search taking place, um, they found Lamar and Zaire laying on the ground, one in the bed, one on the ground, coughing. They died 4 days and 6 days later, respectively. So,
Wow.
we handle a lot of trauma. We handle a lot of heavy lifting stuff that no one wants to be in my sandbox. Um, we have a case that Shia referred to us, um, Dwayne Williams, where Dwayne was convicted and put away for a crime that didn't occur. He served 12 and a half years for um, an accidental fire where two people died. But the ugly part about that case is that to many of your listeners, they might remember the Duke Lacrosse boys, where they were being charged for rape, and the prosecutor sent over faulty DNA to the defense. Later, subsequently, she recanted, and the DNA, the real DNA, exonerated all of them. So that case is similar to my case with Dwayne because they manipulated the evidence, literally redacted statements and stuff. So that's the world for which I live. And I got here just by caring, you know. I think there's always room for a good worker in any field, as long as you care and you look at it not as a job, but a lifestyle, especially as lawyers. Lawyers just, you know, we're burning the clock all the time. And it's just, that is what it is, you know. There's, when you get a break or get a reprieve, you really got to soak it up because 9 times out of 10, you don't get very many of them.
Yeah. The work never stops when you're in your shoes working on the cases that you work on
That's right. That's right. You
and
know,
having people's lives in your hands, quite literally. So,
yeah, we're not, you know, a good doctor friend of mine says, Flood, you're not curing acne, you're changing trajectories of lives. So, you know, if you look at it from that perspective, that's pretty heavy.
yeah, it is. And it sounds like you jumped in right to the heavy stuff right from the start working on homicides. And I think it's amazing that you started as a clerk from the ground up. You probably learned every kind of part of the prosecutor's office. It sounds like you got to shadow and learn from some of the best over the years and
For sure.
started off a really strong career that way, which is awesome to hear. And taking classes all along, I imagine night classes to get through law school and work those
I
two
did.
parts in tandem.
I did. I worked 40 hours and went to school, and I graduated in 3 years in law school. So I was killing myself. But, you know, I had a passion for doing what I do. And that was, you know, the DNA I have. I was blessed that way. I'm a
Yeah,
servant, you know, and I like being that person. So it is what it is. That's, you know, and I did. I had great mentors. I mean, Augustus Hutting, Lisa Lindsay. I think Augie, um, you may remember Presumed Innocent with Harrison Ford. You're probably too young, but maybe you remember that movie. Harrison Ford played in a movie. It was very popular. It was called Presumed Innocent. And Augie was my mentor, Augustus Hutting. And Harrison Ford came to Detroit to follow Augie for 60 days to watch him in a couple murder trials. And if you even look at the haircut Harrison had, he modeled his haircut after Augie. But people
wow.
from all over the country would come and watch Augie try a case. And one thing that he was amazing on was facts and details. He worked, you know, he would go over to homicide. Homicide, the precinct was right across the street, the old police station, no longer headquarters. Headquarters been moved since, but it was right next door to Frank Murphy. So every Saturday, Augie would be in there with an investigator on Saturday mornings interviewing witnesses, and then he would go out to the scene. He taught me so much about you had to have your fingerprint on every single piece of paper. Then you had to go to a scene. I'll never forget a friend of mine um, was killed. She was rear-ended by a smart bus driver, and the smart bus driver was high. So it happened at she just got home. She was a coach for I want to say it was Regina. I'd have to look at the remember back in the day when that took place, but she was a coach, a basketball coach, and a teacher. Um, and the bus driver was high, I believe on heroin at the time.
Oh, wow.
Augie went with a crew, a TV crew, out in the 2 in the morning to retrace and film. He got on the bus, that particular bus, to have the TV crew videotape what it looked like to the driver at the time he came into the accident. So a prosecutor doing that on his own, that's just amazing, right? He
Yeah.
was doing that. And the you know, but that's what you have to do. You have to go to the scenes. You learn so much. You have to put your fingerprints on every piece of evidence. You got to see it all, you know, and then facts dictate cases. So, you know, that's pretty much major league on how you win and lose a case. You have to know your facts. And then he never had notes. when he was in the courtroom. Never had anything with regards to his opening and closing. Cross-examination, he wrote out an outline, but he never used it because he always memorized it. So those types of
Wow.
things, they're priceless, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think he probably had over 300 murder trials in his career before he passed away. So Lisa Lindsay, the same way. I think one of my biggest first murder trials was the Sunoco Gratiot murder trial with Lisa Lindsay. Not my first, but that was definitely one of them. And two men from Yemen sat on the chest of a black man at the gas station because allegedly his 4-year-old daughter took a candy bar out of the store without paying. And they sat on his chest and killed him in front of his whole family. And Lisa and I did that case. And back in the day, that was huge. National media,
Yeah.
attention all over the place. It was scary to that extent. But Yemen didn't have a extradition requirement with the United States of America. So a lot of bond cases. And back then we had Otis Culpepper, Cornelius Pitts, Mark Krieger, D-Day Loren, all of those guys were in on the case on the defense side. So I was learning from the best because in the city of Detroit, that was like the top five, right? Attorneys that just came into our playbook.
Yeah.
Um, I've just been blessed. I really have. I've been very fortunate to have what I got.
That's awesome. I can feel the passion that you have for this career, and it sounds like a lot of the early people that you worked with had that same kind of heart and passion going into it, and I'm sure that just helped you grow and really learn
For
in
sure.
the early days, and that's awesome. So, out of all of the cases that you have tried, including homicides and complex criminal matters and all of that, how did those early experiences shape how you approach your cases today?
That's a great question. So, fundamentals. I always start with the recipe. So, tell me what the jury instructions are. So, if you get the opportunity, Sarah, to sit on a jury someday, the judge is going to give you jury instructions. And she's going to say, whether it be a civil case or a criminal case, she's going to say, or he's going to say, at the end, this is what must be proved either by the prosecution or by the civil case, whatever it may be. So I always start off, what are the ingredients? What do I have to show to a case or to a jury to either disprove a case or to prove a case? How has that impacted me? I think one of the biggest cases I had was one of the biggest cases in the country, and that was the Flint water crisis, where
Mm,
146 people died up in Flint in Genesee County, from
yep.
either Legionella or some other comorbidity that caused them to die. And we prosecuted, I think we were up to like 20, I can't remember. It was either 17 to 20 something defendants that I was prosecuting at the time. And we had a huge team, but that's where we always started. What is it that has to go to the jury? What must we prove to show that one of these state officials, be it the governor, be it the director of health and human services, be it the doctor, whomever it may be, what do we have to show to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that they are guilty of what is called involuntary manslaughter? And so, how do I approach it? The same way I was taught. I was taught, start at the end, figure out what it is I have to prove. And I worked through the case meticulously to go through all of the facts and to see if the facts match up the law. That's what lawyers have to do. They look at the law, they look at the facts. Do the facts match a violation of law? Or, or not? And that's how I approach things. It's kind of like basic fundamentals. Maybe you remember the very beginning movie of Karate Kid, and that Karate Kid. So I tell all the youngsters in this place, watch Karate Kid, right? Because it's wax on, wax off, and he's like waxing cars. And the actor who is playing the kid says, "Why am I waxing your cars? Why am I doing this labor?" And then later on, he learned basic fundamentals of these moves, right? So people ask me all the time, why am I reading X or why am I doing Y? And I'll say, because you got to know the basics, got to have the basic fundamentals. So, that's how I start off with the case. What is it that the jury's going to get? How are they going to get it? and then what do the facts show?
I like it. And I feel like that's an applicable lesson to most things in life. The wax on,
Probably
wax
true.
off. So I
Probably
think
true.
that's, yeah, it's a good reminder for everybody. And to the movie references, I've never seen Presumed Innocent, but I will put that on my list because I love Harrison Ford. The Fugitive is one of my favorites.
Gotta love it. Gotta love
That's
it.
that's a good one.
There's a yeah top 10 list. My Cousin Vinny. Gotta watch My Cousin Vinny.
Okay.
Uh, gotta watch Civil Action. That's you gotta watch Dark Waters, and you gotta watch Aaron Brockovich.
Oh, okay.
So
I have not
yeah,
seen most of these, so you'll have to send me a list after after we're done
yeah.
here, and I'll put them
That's a
start working through
mandatory.
them.
That's yeah. No, you got to watch those. All of those things are great movies.
Okay.
Civil Action dealt with a tanning company for tanning, leather, and they polluted the water. True story. They polluted the water, and there was a cluster of cancer, right, in that city, in that town. Now, why is that relevant to today? Because we have a thing called PFAS. PFAS, all the chrome, right, that's
Yep.
getting into your drinking water, your drinking table, right, and you'll see clusters throughout the state of Michigan and you'll ask yourself, why do people get cancer over here? So you got to show causation, you got to show a connection. The other one, Dark Waters, dealt with Teflon, which was on the bottom of pans,
Yep.
right?
Still is,
And
unfortunately.
yeah, and so all the cattle were dying, all the people were dying,
Yeah.
right? And that was a great movie. Aaron Brockovich, another one. So that was with Julia Roberts. So yeah,
Love
all
her.
great movies.
All right,
Yeah,
awesome. I love it. I have a
yeah.
lot of watching to do then, so I'm gonna let you go now. No, just kidding. So back to your work at the prosecutor's office. What was the
Yep.
biggest shift from going from the prosecutor's office into private practice, which is where you've been for the last several years?
25 of them. Yeah. So, you know, there's a lot. There was a lot. Obviously, resources. I didn't
Sure.
have a bank. I didn't have a book of cases. I mean, I could walk out to Livernois where there were gangs when I left, and the like, and they heard I left. That was back in that day. I could get, I could do no wrong, but I didn't have a bank or a book of business. So judges in the Third Circuit here in Detroit and Wayne County started appointing me to cases, and I would take everything I could get my hands on. And then I started entertaining and taking out managing partners of major law firms because major law firms in the civil, Dickinson, Honigman, Dykema, Bodman, they have clients that have wealth, and clients with wealth have kids that get in trouble. So, I was one that was a tapped resource, but my business model was I didn't have money. So I had to figure out how to be an entrepreneur and how to create business. And so when I took my appointed cases, sad, tragic case, a man driving a car over on the east side of Detroit, a little 4-year-old came out into the middle of the road. It was a dart out case, and my client hit him and killed him. My client stopped, got out of the car, gave aid and the like. And all the major lawyers, we call it the Rock. You go to the Rock. The Rock is the jail or the prison, right? I went to the Rock every day to see my clients, and I'd give them my briefs, I'd give them my papers. And so all of a sudden, this case pops up on TV. It must have been a slow news day, right? No TV, no news. So they covered this car accident case. And here I am, right, talking on TV in an interview on this case. And then in the jail cells, there was 3 TVs that were lined up along the corridor in the jail. And all of a sudden, here I am on Channel 7 Action News, and everyone says, "Is that your lawyer?" So my guy doesn't come to the Rock, and I see him here every day. So I started getting business, and I just built up a reputation. I think that, like I said at the very beginning, there's always room for a good worker, and you got to care. If you really care
Yeah.
about what you do, and you take it that way, you'll do okay. So my career kind of like went from there to a turbo charge, and I started getting bigger and bigger cases and handling all sorts of things.
Would you call that? It sounds like maybe that was your big break when you, separated from the prosecutor's office and started your own practice. Was that like your first big, like people starting to know you and recognize you and um,
Yeah,
sounds like
I
maybe
think
your first
so.
time on
Outside
TV?
in the, yeah, right, in the public eye, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure, for sure.
yeah,
In the courtrooms, and in the federal courthouse and in the criminal courthouse within Detroit, I was well known because I
yeah,
had done a lot of stuff at the prosecutor's office, and um, we work in a fishbowl. Um, One thing that I always tell my younger lawyers and associates, don't cheat, lie, or steal, right? Because if you do something, you can take down our reputation in a matter of a second that I took 30 years to build.
yeah.
So I had a good reputation of integrity, and that's why I got a lot of appointments. So I was well known within the system, but I wasn't well known, outside of the courthouse, right?
Sure.
So I had to build up clients. It's like you taking to see Shy and going out to lunch with them, right? Remember,
Yep.
you wanted to get him as a client. Well, I had to do that kind of stuff as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I feel like any entrepreneur that I've ever talked to, that's always the hardest thing is when you are starting off your own practice, your own business, or whatever it is, bringing in that clientele because you're always a salesman at that point.
That's
Um,
right. That's right. Right.
and
Right.
doing all
Yeah.
of the like going to the jail and meeting with your clients and really the heart and the care, it all comes back to that. Everything that you talk about, it's
Yeah.
so apparent that that's what really you stand apart from, I'm sure, a lot of other people in your space, because you really care about what you're doing and it's so obvious
Yeah.
the way you speak about it.
Well, you have to, I'm an old school guy. Um, so I was taught. So you have to tell a jury a story. You have to tell a judge a story. You
Mm-hmm.
have to tell a judge you got a guy that's going to be sentenced, or you got a case where you want to win because someone just lost their life in a civil matter. I'm an old school guy. You got to fall in love with your client. You may not agree with them. You may not, may have different philosophical approaches, but you got to sit down with your client and you got to be able to know them and their family and their offsprings and their brothers and their sisters. You got to know them and to know them, right? So a jury can look you in the eye and say, this guy's not full of BS, right? He knows his people. He knows his facts. So again, that's just part of the gig. So I learned to know everything I can know about my clients.
And then you really know who you're fighting for, especially if you know their family and their kids
Yeah.
and you're fighting for all of them.
Right.
To have
Right.
their person be in their life. So I think that's awesome.
Huh.
So we are running out of time here, but I do have one more question. I always like to end with some advice for other listeners. So for someone who's looking to build a career in law or step into high level litigation, what should they focus on early? And what's one mistake you see that holds people back in this space?
So the best experience in the world is working for a prosecutor's office or a public defender's office in the beginning to get trial experience. One thing that civil attorneys don't get a lot of that we do have a lot of, civil attorneys settle most of the cases. They don't try a lot of cases, right? If you
Hmm.
get to the government, if you become a prosecutor or a public defender, you're going to try a lot of cases. You're going to be put in the box with 12 jurors sitting and looking at you, and you're going to have to know your thing, and you're going to make mistakes. If you don't make mistakes, if you don't lose, you're not trying, right? So you got to get your hands in the mud. You got to you got to work. You got to get in there and do it. The other thing is steal, be a spy, be a thief, go and watch, go see the best, learn what they do, learn how they do it. Doesn't mean you duplicate them, but you learn what works in a courtroom and how to make it, part of you, who you are. So I always tell people to figure out one, if you can get a job in the public sector. You go to these big firms nowadays, you're going to be counting paper and billing hours. If you get into a public sector, potentially you're going to try more cases. The next thing is, if you want to be a trial lawyer, that is, if you want to be someone that goes into a courtroom that's feared in that courtroom, go watch them. Go watch the best, and learn. So that's key.
So anyone listening who is looking to either level up their law career or go to law school and start off from the ground floor, go watch Todd Flood in the courtroom, learn from the best because he has a lot of really great experience and has done wonderful things for people in the community.
You're too kind, Sarah. But thank you very much.
You are too kind. Thank you for joining me today. It was really fun and interesting hearing about your experience, and I look forward to talking to you in the future.
Likewise, likewise. Be well.
Thanks, you too, Todd.